Dark clouds covered the skies of Virel Prime. Acid rain fell from above, hitting the steel ground with sharp hissing sounds. It was another cold and cruel day in the city of metal. A line of alien slaves walked silently through the marketplace. Chains clinked with every step. Some were old, some were young, but all of them had the same look in their eyes, hopelessness. Among them walked Sarah, a tall four-armed alien woman with pale silver skin and glowing blue eyes. She held her robe tight, hiding a small bundle inside. That bundle was her child, her only reason to live. She had not eaten in 3 days, but she did not care. All she wanted was to keep her child alive. Guards noticed her strange behavior and pulled her from the line. One of them grabbed the bundle from her arms. The baby cried. A soft humming sound, unlike any human child. Sarah screamed, "No! Please, he is sick, he needs me." The guards pushed her to the ground and took the child away. "You can have him back if someone buys you." The guard laughed coldly. "Otherwise he goes to the labs." Sarah felt her heart break, but she said nothing more. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking, and followed the guards to the auction platform. Hundreds of humans gathered below, all dressed in rich coats and armor. They laughed, pointed, and placed bets on the aliens like animals. Each slave was brought forward, prices shouted, deals made in seconds. When it was Sarah's turn, the announcer yelled, "Next up, a rare species from the outer rings. Strong bones, perfect for labor or breeding. Bidding starts at 2,000 credits." Sarah looked down at the crowd, searching for someone, anyone, who might help her. She saw only greedy eyes and cold hearts. Then, in the back of the crowd, someone moved. A tall human man with a long black coat and a metal arm stepped forward. His face was scarred, his eyes empty like a man who had seen too much war. He said nothing, just raised his hand. 5,000 credits. The announcer shouted in shock. Gasps echoed through the crowd. No one else? Silence. Sold. Sarah was pulled down and pushed toward the man. She looked up at him, her eyes full of fear and confusion. Was this the monster who would take her child forever? The man leaned forward and whispered, "Don't worry, you'll see him again." Sarah blinked, surprised. Why would a human say that? The guards unlocked her chains, and the man took her by the arm, not with force, but gently. They walked through the rainy streets in silence. She tried to speak, but he stopped her. "We talk later," he said in a flat voice. "You need food and rest." He took her to a small transport ship waiting at the port. The ship looked old but clean. Inside, she saw something strange, a folded blanket. Warm food on a tray, and water. No cage, no collar, no weapons pointed at her. She sat down slowly, still shaking. The man piloted the ship himself, without saying much. She watched him closely, trying to understand. He moved like a soldier, sharp and focused, but something was broken inside him. Something deep. After hours of flying, the ship landed on a green moon, quiet and full of forests. He guided her to a small wooden house near the edge of a cliff. "Home," he said simply inside. He gave her a room. A real room with a bed and door. Sarah sat on the bed and looked around, confused. This was not how humans treated slaves. What was going on? Later that night, she found him sitting alone, staring at a glowing hollow picture of a woman and a child. He didn't notice her, or maybe he didn't care. She whispered, "Why did you buy me?" He answered without turning, "Because I was bought once too." Then he stood up and walked away, leaving her speechless. In her heart, a small spark of hope was born. Maybe, just maybe, not all humans were monsters, but hope is dangerous. And the galaxy was still full of those who would kill for less than a child's secret. Asterisk, the forest moon of Orion 6 was nothing like Virel Prime. There were no slave ships, no neon lights, no screams. Only wind in the tall silver trees, the soft hum of insects, and the distant calls of wild creatures. It felt like another universe, not just another planet. Sarah stood outside the wooden house, her bare feet touching real ground for the first time in years. She looked up, watching leaves float like feathers through blue mist. This place felt peaceful, too peaceful. Like the silence before a storm, inside, the man moved with quiet strength. He cooked, cleaned, repaired gear, and barely said a word. Sarah learned his name from the ship's control panel, Rain. No title, no rank, just Rain. He didn't act like a master, but he didn't act like a friend either. He was something in between, a ghost wearing skin. Rain had given her space. A room, food, and time, but no answers. Sarah waited, watched, listened. The house had no security, no locks on her door. She could have escaped, but where would she go? Her child was still somewhere out there, and this man, this human, had promised she'd see him again. One night, Sarah followed the soft sound of humming through the hall. She peeked into Rain's room and saw him kneeling by a small storage box. He wasn't humming. The box wizard played an old earth lullaby on a broken loop. Inside was a child's toy, a tiny boot, and a necklace with a name carved in metal. Ellie. Rain didn't notice her, or maybe he didn't care. He held the necklace tightly, eyes full of memories he could never forget. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She finally understood. He had lost something too. Maybe everything. Days passed, and slowly, Sarah began helping. She cleaned, repaired tools, learned how to cook human food. Rain never thanked her, but he didn't stop her either. Their silence became its own language. Then one morning, she heard a noise outside, engines, landing gear. She ran out and saw Rain walking toward a ship parked at the edge of the forest. When he returned, he was not alone. In his arms was her child. Sarah's legs gave out as she ran to him, tears falling from her eyes. She took the child and held him close, feeling his tiny heart beat against hers. The child looked healthy, fed, and calm. Rain said nothing, just turned and walked back inside. Later, while Sarah fed her son, Rain finally spoke. They were selling him to a genetics lab, he said. Coldly, I bought him back. Sarah looked at him, shocked. Why? She asked softly. He didn't answer, only said, He's not normal, is he? Sarah stayed quiet, but her silence was enough. Rain picked up a scanner and waved it near the child. The screen glowed, then exploded, sparks flying. Rain stared at the child with wide eyes. What is he? He asked again, voice sharp now, but not angry, just afraid. Sarah looked down at her son, then back at Rain. She knew the truth couldn't stay hidden much longer. My people were created during the ancient wars, she said quietly. Bioweapons. Part machine, part organic. My son is something new. He wasn't supposed to be born. Rain sat down, his face pale. Does anyone else know? Sarah shook her head. No. But they're looking for him. Why? Because inside his blood is a code. One that can unlock weapons or destroy them. Outside, the wind blew harder, and the sky grew darker. Rain stood up and walked to a hidden panel in the wall. He opened it, revealing a set of old armor, scarred and burned from a dozen battles. He touched it like greeting an old enemy. Sarah watched silently, holding her child tighter. Rain turned around, voice low, steady. If they come for him, I'll be ready. But in his eyes she saw something deeper than anger. She saw guilt, fear, and a fire that had been dead for years, now burning again. Because for the first time in a long time, Rain had something to protect, and Sarah, once a slave, now had something to fight for. The child did not cry, even when the nights grew cold or when thunder shook the house. He simply stared at the sky, eyes glowing faintly like twin moons. He was calm, too calm for a baby, like he knew more than he could say. Rain noticed it first. He was fixing a broken generator when the child crawled near it. The machine sparked wildly, and Rain shouted, "Stop!" But before he could reach, the sparks froze in the air. Just froze like time had paused. And then the machine turned back on, by itself. Rain looked at Sarah, shocked. She didn't look surprised, only tired. They sat together that evening, under the trees, while the child slept between them. Sarah finally spoke, her voice heavy. "I was trained never to speak of it," she said. "But he's not just different. He's impossible." Rain stared at her. "Tell me," she hesitated, then looked at her sleeping son. "Our kind was made during a forgotten war," she said. "Created in labs by beings long gone. Weapons designed to win battles with just a thought. But when the war ended, we were hunted, erased, declared too dangerous to exist." Rain nodded. "Weapons are only useful when controlled." Sarah smiled sadly. "Exactly. But then we changed, evolved. Our children were born with something new, something we don't understand." Rain leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What's in him?" Sarah whispered, "He can feel systems, energy, code, machines. He doesn't need to learn them. He just knows." Rain stayed quiet, watching the child sleep. "You mean?" "He's a living interface," Sarah nodded. "Not just interface, Rain. He can control things, shut down warships, unlock data, even crash entire colonies." Rain stood up slowly, the weight of her words hitting him like bullets. "That's why they wanted him," he muttered. "Not because he's rare, but because he's a key." The wind rustled the trees, and somewhere in the distance, an animal howled. Rain stepped inside and activated the old holotable in his cabin. He searched galactic networks, encrypted feeds, black market signals. After a few minutes, he cursed under his breath. He turned to Sarah, his voice tense. "There's a bounty. Untraceable, silent, but huge. 500,000 credits for a biosynthetic child capable of system disruption. No photo, no name, just a genetic imprint." Sarah looked at her child, fear spreading in her chest. "They know," she whispered. "They're coming." That night, Rain took no rest. He unlocked the storage below the house, pulling out old weapons, shield panels, cloaking fabric, and more. He was no longer just a quiet man in the forest. He was a soldier again, preparing for war. Meanwhile, the child began to change. He drew strange shapes in the dirt, symbols not taught. He stared into Rain's cum device, and it glitched every time. When Sarah sang to him, her voice soft and glowing, the lights around the house dimmed as if listening. Then, one morning, as dawn touched the trees, the child spoke his first word. Not mother, not father, but something no one taught him. He said, "Awaken." Rain turned around, heart pounding. What did he say? Sarah stood frozen, her mouth dry. "That's an activation word," she said slowly, "for machines built during the ancient war." At that moment, a screen lit up by itself, one of Rain's old defenses satellites. Long dead, suddenly came online. It had detected movement, incoming ships, fast and silent, no ID signals. Hunters were coming, and they weren't far. Rain cursed, running to activate the perimeter alarms. Sarah held her child, who looked up at her, calm as ever, like he already knew this would happen. Rain returned with 2 rifles and a knife strapped to his leg. "They found us," he said. 3, maybe 4 hours, maybe less. Sarah stood tall, no longer afraid. "What do we do?" she asked. Rain looked at her, then at the boy. "We don't run," he said. "We make them regret coming here." As the sun rose higher, painting the forest in gold, the quiet house on Orion 6 prepared for its first battle. A child with ancient power, a mother with unbreakable will, and a soldier with nothing left to lose. Together, they would face the darkness, not as victims, but as something far more dangerous, a family worth fighting for. The wind shifted on Orion 6. Birds vanished from the trees, and the silence turned sharp. The forest had changed. It could feel death coming. And so could Rain. He stood at the edge of the clearing, armor strapped across his body, eyes scanning the horizon. The satellite had gone silent again, but not before showing 4 inbound ships. Fast, black, invisible to most scanners. Built for one thing only, hunt and extract. They were close. Too close. Inside the cabin, Sarah whispered to her son, her voice calm but her hands shaking. "Stay quiet, stay still," she said, brushing his soft glowing skin. The child blinked slowly, then touched her cheek. A sudden warmth spread through her chest. Was it comfort or warning? Rain re-entered the house and pulled up a glowing map on the wall. "They'll land on the west ridge," he said. "Dense trees, low visibility, perfect for a strike." Sarah asked, "Can we hide?" Rain shook his head. "No, they're too good. If we run, they'll track us. If we fight, maybe they bleed." He handed her a small stun blade, light and sharp. She held it carefully, as if it could burn her. "I've never killed," she said quietly. Rain looked at her, his voice cold, then aimed to protect. As the sun dipped behind the ridge, shadows crawled across the forest. Then, a soft rumble, barely a whisper. The trees bent slightly, leaves trembling. The hunters had landed. Rain took position on the roof, rifle ready, eyes locked through the scope. He saw dark figures melt through the trees like smoke. No emblems, no lights, just quiet killers, moving in formation. But one of them walked differently, slower, heavier, like he belonged to the ground, not the trees. Rain zoomed in, and his breath caught. It was Derek, his old squad mate from the Earth Defense Legion. Once his best friend, now walking with mercenaries like a ghost in armor. Rain whispered, "What the hell are you doing here, brother?" Derek stepped into the clearing alone, no weapon drawn, hands open. "I know you're watching," he shouted, voice echoing in the still air. "Come out, Rain. We need to talk." Rain didn't move, but Sarah did, peeking through the wooden cracks of the cabin, her child held close. She whispered, "Who is he?" Rain answered without looking, "A man who once saved my life, and might be here to take yours." After a tense silence, Rain jumped from the roof. Landing softly on the ground, he approached slowly, rifle lowered but not dropped. "Why are you here, Derek?" Derek smiled sadly. "To offer you a way out," Rain laughed, but it had no joy. "You came with ghosts and guns and you're talking peace?" Derek nodded. "You have something they want. Give it to us. Walk away. No blood spilled." Rain stepped closer, his voice like steel. "I know what they want. I also know what it can do." Derek's eyes narrowed. "Then you know it doesn't belong in your hands." From the trees, Sarah watched, every part of her tense. She could hear them, more mercenaries creeping closer, weapons ready. She knew it was a trap. They weren't offering peace. They were waiting for Rain to hesitate, but Rain didn't. He looked Derek in the eyes. "I didn't keep him because I want power," he said. "I kept him because I finally found something worth saving." Then he fired. The first shot hit Derek's shoulder, spinning him backwards. The forest exploded into chaos. Gunfire, flash bombs, screams of metal and pain. Sarah ran to the hidden crawl space below the house, shielding her child. Above her, the sounds of war returned, the same sounds she thought she had left behind. Rain moved like a shadow, every bullet a message. He wasn't just fighting to win. He was fighting to protect, to redeem, to survive. One by one, the mercs fell, but they were fast, clever, and brutal. Rain took a shot to the leg but kept moving. Derek crawled behind a tree, clutching his bleeding arm. "You never changed," he growled through his cum. Rain responded, "You did." As the last light faded and the forest turned black, the surviving mercs retreated, dragging Derek with them. They didn't get what they came for, but they left a warning. Rain collapsed against a tree, blood soaking his leg. Sarah ran to him, holding the child. He looked at them and forced a smile. "You're safe," he whispered. "For now." Deep in the forest, Derek looked back at the cabin through red-lit eyes and muttered, "He's not just a boy. He's the beginning of something dangerous." The forest healed faster than Rain did. Birds returned to their songs. Trees stood tall again. But the soldier moved slower now. His leg was wrapped tight with plasma gauze, his breath heavier, his eyes more tired, but still, he smiled more. It started with the boy. Every morning, Rain would wake to find the child sitting beside him, blinking quietly, He'd press one small hand to Rain's bandaged leg, and the pain would ease, just a little. Does he know what he's doing? Rain asked Sarah one day. I don't think so, she replied. But I think his heart chooses before his mind does. In the days that followed, silence turned into conversation. Sarah no longer walked with fear in her steps. She laughed. When Rain burned their food, teased him when he couldn't fold the strange alien sheets she brought from her planet, Rain watched her closely now. Not as a burden, not as a past, but as a possibility. They had built something in the middle of nowhere, not just walls and shields, but trust, the kind that takes pain to grow and time to feel safe inside. One night, while the child slept with his tiny arms around a scrap metal toy Rain had welded for him, Sarah sat on the porch, staring at the stars. Rain joined her, limping slightly, 2 mugs of warm drink in his hand. You believe in destiny? He asked. Quietly, Sarah took the mug, smiled faintly. I used to. Then the war took it from me. Rain nodded. Same. A pause. Then she turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. But now, I see it again. They didn't kiss, didn't touch, but something passed between them, silent and strong, like gravity, not forced, not fast, but real. The next morning, the boy said his second word. Family. It was soft, broken, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to say it. Rain froze. Sarah covered her mouth, tears welling up. He looked at both of them, then gently reached out his arms. One to her, one to Rain. Sarah knelt, holding him close. Rain, without saying a word, placed a hand on the boy's back. In that moment, something changed in Rain. The soldier who had once lost everything now had something again, not a mission, not a weapon, but a reason. He wasn't just protecting them, he was part of them. But peace never stays long in a galaxy built on fear. That night, a soft chime echoed through Rain's comm system, encrypted message. Deep channel, ghost signal. He opened it. A voice, distorted but familiar, whispered through the static. They're sending more. Bigger team, corporate unit. Not mercs, scientists and soldiers. They're not coming to take the child. They're coming to study and dismantle him. Rain sat in silence, fists clenched. Sarah stepped in, saw the screen, and didn't even ask. She simply said, we have to leave. Rain looked at her, heart breaking. Where? Sarah's answer was slow, almost painful. There's a system. Blacked out from scanners, ancient ruins, forbidden by law. They fear it, which means it might keep us safe. Rain nodded. We'll go. But as he turned, the boy was already looking at him, like he had heard every word. He reached out again and whispered something too soft to understand. Then, every light in the cabin flickered. A symbol glowed on the wall, old, alien, circular, alive. Rain stepped back, stunned. Sarah's eyes widened. That's not just a symbol, she said. It's a location code. The child had given them coordinates. Rain smiled, just a little. Smart kid. They packed quickly, the boy clinging to both of them. Before they left, Rain stood one last time at the edge of the porch, looking at the forest. His leg ached, his heart heavier than before, but he had found something worth carrying. Family wasn't about blood, it was about choice. And he had chosen them. But deep in space, on a cold moon orbiting a dead star, a lab flickered to life. Data began to download. A copy of the child's energy signature had been uploaded during the last scanner burst. A human voice echoed across the comms. Send in the drones, it said. Bring the mother back alive, kill the soldier, and capture the boy at all costs. Asterisk. Floated through the black. Silent void. No stars nearby, no signal trails, no voices, just silence. Rain had disabled every tracker, rerouted every path, and cut all outside links. No one could follow them here, not unless someone had helped them find the way. Sarah sat near the window, watching the stars blink softly behind them. The boy rested on her lap, drawing tiny glowing lines in the air with his fingers. They weren't random, they were symbols again, Like codes that only he could understand, Rain piloted the ship. Mind alert but heart calm, he looked back at them often now, not to check, but to remind himself they were still real. They had escaped Orion 6, fought off mercenaries, and were now heading toward a hidden system lost to maps. He should have felt safe. But something itched in his thoughts, a shadow he couldn't shake. After hours of silence, they reached the edge of the hidden system. It was a graveyard of stars, burnt planets, broken moons, strange rings floating like ancient bones. Rain brought the ship into orbit, activating stealth shields. Then he turned to Sarah. "This is the part where I ask you what we're walking into." Sarah nodded slowly. "This place used to be a research world, built by those who made us, my kind. They abandoned it when it began to wake up." Rain raised an eyebrow. "Wake up?" Sarah looked down at her son. "There are things in the dark, Rain. Sleeping. Machines, old minds, and voices. My son can hear them." Before Rain could respond, the ship's control panel blinked red. A distress beacon. Weak and scattered, coming from the surface. Sarah's face turned pale. "That's our people's frequency." Against better judgment, they followed it, landing on a broken landing pad carved into black stone. Surrounded by dead towers and glowing vines, the air felt heavy, like breathing through a memory. They stepped outside, weapons ready, child held close. As they moved through the ruins, shadows followed. Not creatures, but memories, holograms, flickered on stone walls, showing labs, scientists, creatures and tanks. One image stopped them cold. Sarah's face, younger, with chains on her wrists and a code above her head. Rain stared, jaw tight. "What is this?" Sarah answered quietly, "Where I was made." Suddenly, a voice echoed through the ruins. Smooth, sharp and human. "Welcome back, Sarah." Rain raised his weapon instantly, eyes scanning. Then, a figure stepped from the shadows. Derek. Alive, armored, and smiling like a man who had already won. "You survived," Rain growled. Derek smirked. "Barely, thanks to your aim. You never did shoot to kill." Rain took a step forward. "How did you find us?" Derek laughed. "You really don't know, do you?" Then he turned to Sarah. "Tell him." Sarah froze. Rain looked at her, confused, then alarmed. "What's he talking about?" She stayed silent, eyes locked on Derek. Rain's voice dropped. "Sarah." Derek answered for her. "She contacted us. She gave us the boy's location. Said she just wanted to keep him safe. That you were unstable." Rain staggered back like he'd been punched. "That's not true." He whispered. Sarah finally spoke, her voice shaking. "I didn't betray you. I sent a signal long ago, before I knew you. It was supposed to call my people, not them." Rain looked broken, torn between rage and disbelief. Derek stepped forward. "She trusted us more than she ever trusted you. She still does." "No," Sarah said firmly now, stepping between them. "That's not true anymore. I didn't know what he was until I saw what love looked like." Derek raised his gun, aiming at Rain. "I'm taking the boy," he said. "You can live. Rain, or die here." Rain didn't move. He stared at Sarah, then the child, then back at his old friend. His hand slowly dropped the rifle. "Then take me instead," he said quietly. "Let them go." Everyone froze. Even Derek looked surprised. Sarah shouted, "No!" But Rain stepped forward, arms raised. "I'm the one who trained the boy to speak," he said, lying. "I'm the real threat, not them." Derek hesitated. Just for a second, it was enough. The child's eyes glowed bright, and every light in the ruins shut down at once. The ground shook, the walls cracked. Machines rose from beneath the earth, not weapons, protectors, built long ago. Rain grabbed Sarah and the boy, pulling them behind cover as drones swarmed the sky. Derek disappeared in the chaos, shouting into his cums, fall back, it's waking up." Rain looked at Sarah, bleeding but alive. "We need to go," he said. She nodded, holding their child tight. But as they ran, something heavy settled between them. Not just fear, but the taste of betrayal, forgiven maybe, but not forgotten. The ruins of the old city were falling apart. Stone walls cracked under the weight of awakening machines. Giant metallic roots burst from the ground, glowing veins pulsing like living arteries. Something ancient had heard the child's voice. And now, it would not go back to sleep. Rain ran through the smoke, his wounded leg nearly giving out. Sarah followed close, the boy in her arms, eyes still glowing. Brighter now, almost blinding. Above them, the sky shimmered with swirling lights. Satellites crashing, drones losing control. The child wasn't just escaping. He was rewriting the battlefield, but danger still hunted them. Derek's squad moved in fast, armor glowing red. Voices shouting commands through digital storm. There. Orders were clear. Take the boy, kill the rest. Rain dove behind a broken wall, raised his last imp grenade, and looked at Sarah. You ready? She nodded, breath shaking, but her grip on the child steady as steel. Rain kissed her forehead quickly. Whatever happens, he said, you run north, through the black gate. There's a ship buried under the cliffs. Take him, get out. What about you? Sarah asked, voice cracking. Rain gave a small smile. I'll hold them. Before she could answer, Rain stood and tossed the grenade. It exploded in a pulse of blue fire, crashing half the squad's systems. He rushed in, gun blazing, a one-man. Storm of fury and love, Sarah ran, boots hitting stone, breath ragged. Child clutched close. Behind her, gunfire roared, shouts echoed, and explosions lit the air like thunder. She didn't look back, she couldn't. If she did, she might stop running, and they would all die. The black gate appeared just beyond a bridge of rusted steel. Sarah ran across it, and the earth shook beneath her. Suddenly, a shadow dropped from the sky. Derek, armor smoking, gun raised, face bruised and furious. Give him to me. He shouted, he doesn't belong to you. Sarah backed away, holding the child tightly. He's not a thing, she said. He's my son. He's not yours either. Derek stepped forward, but the child raised his hand. The air around him shimmered, and Derek's gun turned to ash. Derek froze, eyes wide. What? What is he? Sarah answered calmly. A beginning. Behind them, Rain stumbled onto the bridge, covered in blood and dust. Barely standing, but he was alive. He pointed his weapon at Derek. Step away, he said, voice low but filled. With fire, Derek hesitated, then dropped to his knees. He looked at Rain, then the boy, and whispered, You don't understand what you've created. Rain limped forward, standing over him. I do, he said, and I'm choosing to. Protect it. Sarah helped Rain walk as they passed through the gate. Leaving Derek behind in the ruins, the gate sealed behind them, closing with a deep hum. On the other side, silence. A large underground hangar stretched before them. Vines covering an old starship that still pulsed with energy. Rain collapsed. Breathing hard, blood soaking through his armor, Sarah dropped beside him, pressing her hands to his wound. You're losing too much, she whispered. Rain smiled weakly. Worth it. The boy touched Rain's chest, and a soft glow spread through his skin. The bleeding slowed, but Rain's eyes were heavy. I can't go with you, he whispered. Sarah shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. You're coming. Rain looked at the boy. Take care of her, he said. You're more than code, kid. The child placed his hand on Rain's heart, then looked at Sarah. I can help, he said softly. Then, light burst from him, pure and quiet, wrapping around Rain like a cocoon. The wounds faded. The breathing steadied. Rain blinked, alive again. Sarah covered her mouth in shock. The child smiled, tired but peaceful. Rain looked at him. What are you? The boy tilted his head. I think. I'm Hope. Together, they entered the ship, systems lighting up with the boy's touch. Coordinates entered themselves. Doors sealed. Engines hummed. Outside, machines from the ruins began to rise. Guardians of the boy's legacy. No longer asleep, the past had tried to control him. The present had tried to destroy him, but the future now belonged to him and the family who chose him. As the ship lifted off into the stars, Rain stood beside Sarah, his arm around her shoulder. She held the child in her arms, eyes forward. No more running, no more hiding. Just a new journey, as mother, as father, and as protector of something the galaxy had never seen before. Not a weapon, not a code, but a child of love. Born from war, saved by choice,